No offense if you're watching this, Brian, but I think you're just another typical useful idiot who does not recognize that the reason that this is sold to us. Brian Castine defends adult men running around naked and flashing their D's to kids. Yikes, Rachik responded to Krasenstein's argument. Oh, this is the original tweet, which is what got him in hot water. Number one, seeing a man naked on a bike isn't going to have much of an impact on any kid. They have likely seen their father or brother naked before. Two, sharing an uncensored video of a naked man on a bike to an audience possibly 30 million kids on Twitter is arguably worse than riding a bike naked in front of a kid or two in a planned event that the kid's parent took them to. Three, there are much, much worse things the average kid will see or hear online and offline in a typical week. Completely missing the point. This is 100% missing the point entirely. Just don't get it. You just don't get it. You just do not understand. And I think it's important. One of the things I think is of the utmost importance is this. I think a lot of people on the right, in fact, not just on the right, I think most people, when they hear this, their stomach turns at the idea of some old dude marching naked in a parade in front of children who are lining the streets. And they're like, what the heck is happening to our country? But you have to ask yourself, okay, why? Why are you against it? And you need to understand logically the emotions that you're feeling, why it is that you're feeling that way. Because when you understand the logic behind your emotion, you are better prepared for the inevitable slippery slope that the left is constantly trying to use to tilt our society down a perilous path. You don't know why. You need to understand, not just in your heart, but you need to understand in your mind as to what they are doing and why it's an affront to you, why they are doing it, and what is bothering you about this entire thing. You need to understand intellectually, why is it that we are at a place right now that there are men doing this, or women? There are men doing this, and that there are parades, and that parents are taking these kids to these parades, and just how damaging it is. Every one of us will say groomer to a parent who's doing that, or to a kid to participate in the parade. But you need to understand what is happening and the root of why you're feeling that way. And the root of why you're feeling that way is the very reason it is happening. That is the concept of human dignity. The concept of human dignity goes all the way back 5,000 years. It's an amorphous word, dignity. What does dignity mean? I can sit here and pull up some Webster's definition of it. But the way I'm using the term dignity, I am really looking at it as steps that man takes to separate himself from the animals. Now, the most obvious step that man takes, which goes back thousands of years, long before any religion, even Judaism or Christianity, is that people were wearing clothing. This was not simply for the purpose of keeping safe from the elements, but out of a sense of modesty. And modesty is one way that we distinguish ourselves from animals. Animals don't realize that they're not wearing clothing. We have sufficient refinement, intuitive refinement, to recognize that that is beneath us. The same way we don't eat off the floor, bend over, stick our mouths down, and start munching on some cupcake that fell on the floor. To a dog, there's no distinction between eating a cupcake off a plate on a table or off of a floor. It's the exact same thing. You don't need to teach a person that that is undignified. You just naturally see it, and you know that that is beneath a human to do. There is a natural inclination towards hiding Any sort of bodily function that we engage in and not do it out in the open. Some things we get more accustomed to doing than others. Eating in public. But certainly anything that relates to our human genitalia, whether it's reproductive or excretive, we always naturally tend toward privacy. That this is not something that we put on display before the world. It's considered taboo. Some people enjoy the idea of getting off on breaking the taboo. And the left will have you believe that this taboo was implemented by religion, but that is an outright lie. That does not make any sense. It does not make any sense because it's recorded that men and women had modesty long before any religion existed. So one cannot with good conscience put forward a claim that modesty is rooted in religion when modesty long outdates religion. Now, was modesty something that was incorporated into religions? Yes, of course. Religions try to espouse values that will help you succeed and grow and be happy, not simply in some afterlife, but here on this earth. But the reason they try to root it into religion specifically is because if they tried getting into a naturalist perspective, they know that that's a stupid way to argue, because basically what they're saying is defy natural human convention as far as what is a healthy way to live, what is a healthy way to view yourself. But what is the concept of modesty? Why do people engage in being modest? It's not simply because it's something that's taboo or something like that. I respectfully submit to you that modesty is designed to distinguish us from the animals, much like a crown distinguishes a prince from a peasant. The shirt and pants or skirt that you wear is designed fundamentally for thousands of years to distinguish you from a cow or a pig or a dog or anything of that nature. That is your crown. You might not recognize it, but that is your crown, that you have the dignity to say, I'm not going to walk around with my genitalia flopping all over the place. Not because you're embarrassed about your genitalia, not because you are, you have something to be ashamed of, like your natural body is something to be ashamed of. No, but because it's private. It's something to be shared with a loved one. Something to be shared because your relationship with another human, which is precious and special and individualized, and used often in the expression of it is through physical act, is something that should be unique between one human and another, between one man and woman. This is fundamental to basic human dignity. So you know what? I'm cheapening it. It's not as dignified if I'm doing that, and if I'm doing that standing in the parking lot of Target. I'm cheapening it if I engage in that sort of conduct. The same way that you never see someone literally pull down their pants and excrete all over the floor unless they are homeless in a public setting. So too, it was a common concept that understood that you don't walk around with your genitalia flopping around for the entire world to see. There was literally no distinction about this for thousands of years until the 60s. That dignity, that we are a superior species to other animals who cannot appreciate the value of our bodies, the specialness of our bodies, the specialness of who we are, that's not embarrassment, but that's a crown. That's not something to be ashamed of or outdated, but it's actually something, it's not imprisoning. Quite the contrary, it's liberating. It is raising you up. Can that be a burden sometimes? Of course. Of course it can be a burden. That's not the point. Sometimes wearing a crown could be a burden. But if you toss your crown off a cliff, are you better off for it? And I think the left has a sincere desire to strip us of our human dignity. It has a sincere objective of trying to motivate us to act like animals. And that is because if you act like that, if you act like you are no superior to an animal, that you are just another carbon life form that happens to be inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, just like the rooster, just like your cat, just like some mongoose in the wilds of whatever jungle, you don't view yourself as having high value. And we've seen this psychologically time and time again with every single woman who has sold her body, that she ends up feeling ashamed. Why are you feeling shamed? Why aren't you proud of it? Because it's a recognition that she has cheapened herself. And we don't appreciate the sanctity of who we are as a species. And the left never wants us to appreciate that. Never. They want to strip away and basically say we are the same as animals. Now, I want to distinguish between the elitists of the left and the useful idiots who swallow every stupid thing that they say. Because the Brian Krasensteins of the world, I do not consider an elitist. No offense if you're watching this, Brian, but I think you're just another typical useful idiot who does not recognize that the reason that this is sold to us by leftist elitist leaders is specifically so that we devalue ourselves to the point that we act like animals, and accordingly, we are easier to control. And it's ironic that the weapon that they use to try and market this is independence and freedom. Independence. You don't have to, you can, hey, women, you can take off your top and that's totally fine. And everyone, and that's liberation. Think about it. Cows walk around with their udders uncovered. It's all about controlling us. And they feed into basic human nature because human nature does have an appetite. We all have our appetites, and it's easier. So it's an easy sell. Every one of us, I'm not denying that every one of us, myself, you, everyone, every human who ever lived has various what would be considered baser appetites. That's an important part of humanity. But the fact that you have an appetite does not mean that you sustain that appetite by walking over to a table that's filled with food, bending over and start sticking your face in it and eating from the bowl. We all understand that. That's obvious to us. If you saw someone doing that, one person might laugh, but they're not laughing because they think it's a good thing. They're laughing at the buffoon. They're laughing at the person. Nobody looks at that person as someone who should be respected. Quite the contrary. We look down on that human being and say, you're gross, you're disgusting. Why? What are they doing that's disgusting? He's just, it's liberating, it's freedom, it's independence. He can do whatever he wants. Why can't he stick his face in a bowl full of Jell-O and some birthday cake? It's his birthday. Let him go plow his face into his birthday cake. Why are you eating with cutlery? Why can't you just stick your hand into the mashed potatoes and pick it up and just slop it onto your plate and just start eating it? We understand the distinctions of dignity. And then people are like, well, can you define it? And they try and use semantics to basically pretend that they don't understand what dignity is. So they say, aha, you see, I got you. Aha, you see, you'll do this. what's the objective of even trying to one up in that sort of way? It doesn't make any sense. And therefore what? So that means dignity doesn't exist? It's mindless. And that is why, as I'm looking at what Krasenstein is talking about here, when he is sitting there and he's like saying, well, you talk about potential impact on a child, lots of kids see nudity. Parent, sibling, whatever. They don't see public nudity. They're not trained to start thinking that, hey, that walking around like this is natural. They aren't taught. That's never happened before. What they are basically being taught, if someone takes a child to a pride parade where they know that this type of conduct is happening because they're so open-minded, and we have to show, I want to teach my child that you should be understanding of other people. You should be accepting of other people. What the hell does that even mean? That doesn't mean anything. That's so stupid. That's like how you should be understanding of somebody who sticks their genitalia in anything that moves. What? Why? You should be understanding of somebody who likes to flog lepers. Why? Well, that's what he likes to do. You need to be understanding. Why? Why is that something that I need to motivate my kid? Because what ends up happening when you take a kid to something like that is the difference between that and Brian Krasenstein's personal story when he's 9 years old and he sees a streaker running around the field. You know what his reaction was? It was typical 9-year-old reaction. You're laughing at the buffoon. The same way he would laugh at that guy if instead of streaking across the field, he would be going face first into a pile of a cardboard, a wood thing of deli meat, because it's clownish. The same way, but what's the reaction? It's not like, oh, this is a good thing to do. This is a proper thing to do. This is what you, little Timmy, should be doing. No, he's laughing at the guy. He's a loser. When a kid sees their parent or some sibling, some adult, there's an accidental sighting of some sort of nudity, the kid properly feels embarrassed. Why? Why are they turning red in the face? The reason that happens is that is their alarm bell that is going off, that this is wrong. This is something that's bad. This is something that's not supposed to be. A kid naturally is taught, feels, even though they're 2 years old, they have no embarrassment about their genitalia. They have no concept of nudity. But once they get to a certain age, they start appreciating that this is not what's done. Why? Because society has basically said, this is not what's done. Is that rooted in religion? No, that's rooted in concepts that predate religion by thousands of years. Because healthy society has recognized that we need to remember our superiority over animals rather than pretending that we're exactly like animals. And that is the only way we maintain that superiority. If you want to abandon your superiority to animals, continue to act like an animal. And if you want to continue, you want to do that, by all means. If you want to debase humanity, if you want to make humanity less than what it is, so in that case, you should be encouraging every human to go out and act like an animal. This literally means forget about privacy in bathrooms. You can understand why the T's are able to go marching on in, even though everyone knows that it's just coddling them. Because why should a woman be entitled to any sort of privacy? Why should you get any privacy? Why do you need privacy? Animals don't need privacy. Why do you need privacy when you engage in any sort of coitus of any nature? Why? Why would you need that? Animals don't need that. Why do you need cutlery? You don't need cutlery. Animals don't need that. Why do you need clothing? You don't. It is taking the crown of human superiority and spitting on it before setting it on fire, like with resentment. Like I resent the fact that I'm a human who has to have dignity. That's leftist perspective, and that's intentional, and that's the elitist leaders. You don't. By the way, you don't see these leftist leaders actually debasing themselves. No, 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 no. You're not going to see Nancy Pelosi all of a sudden. You're not going to see her kids parading naked through streets of San Francisco. Why? Because that's for the useful idiots. That's for the useful idiots. And if they do, it's considered an embarrassment to Nancy. Yeah, sure, every once in a while, there'll be some offspring who's like, ha ha, I'm going to do this because they're trying to be rebellious, and that's whatever. That's a rebellious streak. And we're getting to a point where decades from now, you can foresee that the leaders at the top will start to engage in it more and more also, because there's nothing considered shameful anymore. But that's not what garnered anyone respect ever in human history. It's just not something that humans should be engaging in. And then there's the second thing, which is no less important, but this is the one that's easy, that every one of you knew already, which is if you take a kid to this sort of thing, instead of them feeling embarrassed the way they would if they accidentally walked in on a parent who was changing, but instead you take them to parade and say, hey, here's some total stranger who's waving his dingus 6 feet away from you, and proudly like dancing and twerking to music, wearing nothing at all, and I want you to sit here and watch this. What you are basically doing is any alarm bells that we naturally have of danger, danger, stranger danger are ripped out, deadened. Which now you're taking that kid and you're putting them in a position where it's like, hey, if you actually see someone who wishes to do you harm, there is no alarm that's going off because, oh, mom said this is totally normal. This is natural. Everyone has, we all have our private parts to our bodies, and this man sharing it with me in his hotel room. How would a kid know the difference? That's why it's grooming. That's why it's dangerous. It's grooming the kid to not have their natural alarm bells that every child has. You know what, Brian? When you saw that guy streaking across there, you were raised at a time and a place and a culture where that was unusual. That's why you laughed at it. But these kids who are being taken to that parade would not laugh at it, because when they come to these parades, they're told explicitly, don't laugh, don't make fun, don't point, because this is all normal. This is all natural. It's good that you had an uncomfortable laugh at that guy. I'm like, oh my gosh, isn't that guy crazy? That is much, 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 much healthier than coming out and saying, oh yeah, no, of course, what's the deal? That's what everyone does. Much healthier. Because you were able to protect yourself from a potential predator who means to harm you, who means to take advantage of you, physically, emotionally, mentally, in every way possible, who means to actually corrupt you, who means to use you as his toy. That's why you had a sufficiently healthy upbringing that you laughed. But you're depriving these kids of that upbringing. You're depriving them of the opportunity to protect themselves by saying, what I'm looking at here is wrong. The way this person's interacting, the way this adult is interacting with me is wrong.